What I'm going to do now is give you what's really is a quick and dirty tip. So we talked a little bit about some of the ways in which things can be really wild and random. I want to talk about a way of estimating that for particular kinds of data, and it's a rule of thumb that I use quite a lot. So this is a little bit mathy, but I hope not too much, and might give you a bit of a feel when you see real data. And this is particularly about things like survey data, where you get perhaps whether it's been an opinion poll or whether you've done your business survey to see IT attitudes, and you've perhaps asked a yes/no question or a multiple choice question. And this is the square root times 2 trick. But I use it all the time to give me a gut feeling for these kinds of things. So, sorry, a lot of words on this slide. I'll take you through it bit by bit. So what we're trying to do is estimate the variability, is what we think the likelihood is that might have flickered around. What's the real value likely to be for survey data or data of that kind. So imagine we've got 1,000 people, we've surveyed over 1,000 people, we've asked them their favourite colour. And imagine 10% of them said it was blue. So the question is that 10% a sort of reliable 10%? Is it really 10, could it be as high as 50 or could it be as low as 5? If it's a 10% blue and 30% green, can you make a solid inference that green is bigger than blue, is more likely than blue? So the way to do it is you say you've got 1,000 people, 10% of the sample represents about 100 people. And so my rule of thumb is when I do that, I work out how many people, take the square root of that number, square root of 100 is 10, multiply by 2, 20, and that gives you a pretty good idea of the range of variation. About 90+% of the time, 95, 97, I can't remember the exact number, something like that, it'll be within that range. So plus or minus 20 from 100 is 8 to 12%, so it's a plus or minus 2% on the 10%. So it's a good way. So again, this is typical if you look at opinion polls. They very often have around 1,000 people, sometimes a couple of thousand. So if you're seeing something like a 10% figure, think 8 to 12%, don't think dead on 10. That was for if it was a smaller number. Sometimes it might be something like 85% of the sample. So I'll do another one. So now we've got a smaller sample, only 200 people. 85% said their favourite colour is green. So how reliable is that? So here, instead of taking, when it's the bigger end, you take the small bit that's left. So you take the 15% that's left, the ones who didn't say green. 30 odd, square root of 30 is about 5.5, multiplied by 2, about 11. So plus or minus 11 people from 30. Right, so just under 20 to just over 40. Divide by 200 to turn it back into a percentage. Do it back on paper afterwards if I'm going too quickly for you. So it's about, say, I've got between 19 and 41, but basically 20 to 40-ish. Divide by 200, that gives you a range of plus or minus 5.5%. So your 15% of the people who didn't like green, or your 85% who said they did, could be as high as 90-ish%, could be as low as 80%. It could be anywhere in that range. Again, gives you a sort of gut feeling for the sorts of range thinking, but it would be highly unlikely to be as low as 50% of people really thought green. If it's in the middle, it's slightly different again. So I'm giving you there is a formula behind all this, but these are just quick ones. If it's in the middle, I do exactly the same thing, but usually multiply by about 1.5 for various reasons, don't worry. So, but rather, if you just do it by 2, you're being conservative. But so it's 50-50. Say I had 2,000 people. I've got a big sample nowadays. I've done my sort of opinion poll to who's going to win the big election. We won't mention presidential elections, but maybe a presidential election, maybe a state election, maybe some other sort of opinion poll. And you've got 2,000 responses. 50% said yes, 50% said no. How close to 50-50 is that really? 50% corresponds to about 1,000, well, exactly 1,000 people out of 2,000 sample. Square root of 1,000's 30-ish, 30 plus a bit. 1.5 times that, about 50. So plus or minus 50 people is a reasonable variation. On that 50%, on that 1,000, 50%, dividing by your 2,500, your 2,000 people, that comes to about plus or minus 2.5 So your 50% could be somewhere between 47.5 to about 52.5, thereabouts. So I said these aren't exact numbers. There is an exact formula that goes behind this, but when you're faced with that sort of data, you that's sort of numbers you're looking at. I mean, in particular, if you look at opinion poll data, it's often based on about 1,000 people. So you typically want to see differences between people of quite a bit more than 2% before you start to think one's going to be likely to be the winner and the other one's not. So just a sort of gut thing. Some people say if there's more people, it can get down to about 1%, but often it's around that 2% figure. So anyway, that's quick and dirty trick, and play it back if I said I went through too quickly, and I'll have notes, text notes as well, so that'll help you.